In this video, we will show you how to replace your front brake caliper on this Jeep Liberty. This will be located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheels are off the ground. Once you've done so, we're going to continue on removing the wheel, starting with the lug nuts. Use a 19mm. With the wheel out of the way, we have a close view of our caliper. We're going to have to attempt to at least push back the caliper piston enough that this will be able to move around and we can slide it out of place. To do that, I'll just use a small pry bar, come right inside the slot of the caliper here, up against the pad, and we'll gently pry this. I've got a little bit of movement here. The next thing we'll focus on is our brake flex hose, and you're going to find that you have an ABS wire attached to it with two plastic clips. We have to dislodge the two from each other. To dislodge these, you can use a small pocket screwdriver or just a small prying device. Make your way in between the locking ends and separate it. Once you have that separated, you need to thoroughly inspect the flex hose, the ABS wire, and the plastic clip. We're going to be reusing all of this. The next thing we're going to do is start disassembling the caliper. To do that, we're going to remove our 13mm caliper slider mounting bolts. You can see one down here, and there's one just above it. We'll start with the top one, completely remove it, a quick inspection, start it back in, just a couple threads. That'll hold it in place as we continue down to our next mounting bolt. Let's go ahead and remove that bolt. Continuing from here, we're going to focus on the caliper itself for 1 second. This rubber boot you can see here is a dust boot. If you see any fluid coming out, that means the internal seal of the caliper is bad and you have to go ahead and replace that caliper. The piston's completely pushed in, and now we can hang this up and make sure we put no pressure on that flex hose. Continuing on, we're going to remove the brake pads from the caliper bracket. Generally, you can just push these right out of place. If it feels as though you have to pry them, that means they're stuck in the bracket, and that's something you need to focus on later. Let's get this one out of here. A quick inspection of those brake pads and set them aside. Continuing with the caliper bracket, we're going to remove the two 21mm mounting bolts. There's one down here, one directly above it. Let's go ahead and loosen this one. Quick inspection, start it back in, fully remove the lower. Set the caliper bracket aside. Now it's time to prepare our brand new caliper for installation. To do this, we'll start along the back side. In the center, you have a banjo bolt. This is where the flex hose will go. We'll go ahead and remove this. You should find that you have two copper gaskets in this area. We want to make sure we hold on to those with our mounting bolt here. You can see both of those. Let's get that one off of there too. Moving along, we're going to remove our two 13mm caliper slider mounting bolts here. We'll just hold on to the caliper, give this a little twist counterclockwise to remove it. Same on the other side there. We'll set this portion of the caliper aside temporarily. Focusing on the bracket, we're going to remove the slider pins, lubricate them, and reinstall them. When removing these, typically you can take hold of the caliper slider pin and the boot, give it a twist, and separate it from the bracket itself. If you have a hard time twisting it to break it free, you can use a small screwdriver or prying device here. Slide that right off of there. You'll find it comes with assembly lubricant. I like to give that a quick wipe. And install new high temperature caliper lubricant here. We're going to lubricate the entire shaft of that slider pin. Just put a decent amount on there. We'll slide this into place. While sliding it in, you can see that some of my lubricant has made its way along the outside of the bracket here, which is good. We want to try to get it into that groove. A little twist. Same process on the opposite side of the caliper bracket. Now, moving from the slider pins, we're going to lubricate 4 areas of the caliper bracket. There's 2 areas on each side right here, and this is where your caliper bracket tins will sit. We only need a tiny bit of lubricant in each one of these areas. Now we'll pay attention to our caliper bracket tins. In your kit, you'll find that it comes with 4 tins for your caliper, and 2 of them look different than the other 2. Essentially, what you're paying attention to is the tabs that protrude out from each side. On one side, you're going to find a tab that hooks out a little bit, and the other one's smaller and straight out. We want to make sure we have 2 of each of these, making sure that those hook tabs face out and away from the rotor. Same process on the opposite side of the caliper bracket. Set this aside. A quick focus on the other portion of the caliper. This is essentially the muscle portion. We're going to lubricate around this portion of the piston and then along the back side of each of these 2 ears, essentially on the mating points that will hit up against your brake pads. Your inner pad will be along here. The outer pad is along these 2 ears. Let's get over to the vehicle. Let's get that caliper bracket in place on the vehicle. Bring it in here. Continuing on, we have our 2 caliper bracket mounting bolts. It's a good idea to use a small amount of blue thread locker on these applications. Start them in, snug them up, torque those to 100 foot-pounds. When installing these pads, you're going to find that you have your wear indicator. That wear indicator will be on the inboard pad, and it's facing up. Just want to slide these right into the bracket. If you have to force them in, or even use a hammer to try to drive them in, that means there's an issue, and you want to make sure you pay attention to that. At this point, it's time to start removing the caliper from the flex hose. Before you start removing your banjo bolt from this area, it's a good idea to restrict the fluid making its way down to this area. This can be done in several different ways. We're going to use some of these hose pliers and carefully squeeze on the hose just enough to restrict brake fluid flow. We don't want to cause any damage to that flex hose. Now we'll make our way down to that banjo bolt. Make sure you have a collection receptacle under this area so you can recycle your brake fluid properly. We'll remove this, and fluid typically will make its way out. It's going to drain out that caliper. Go ahead and let that caliper fully drain into your collection receptacle, and there it is, friend. With the caliper out of the way, the next thing you need to do is pay attention to your brake flex hose, both sides of it. This side is the area where the banjo bolt will go through, and we're going to have a gasket. On the opposite side, a gasket and the caliper. Let's get this caliper in place over the brake pads onto the caliper bracket. Start in both pieces of your mounting hardware here. We just want to start them in temporarily for now. It's time for your banjo bolt and one of your gaskets. We'll just take that first gasket and slide it right on there. Continue on with taking this, and we're going to bring it through our flex hose. That's going to go in through the flex hose here, and on the opposite side, we have to make sure we install our brand new gasket. This gasket has to go between the flex hose and the caliper. We'll snug that up using our 11mm. The torque for this is 23 foot-pounds. Let's remove those hose pliers. Continue on with your 2 caliper slider mounting bolts. Go ahead and snug those up and then torque them to 28 foot-pounds. Now it's time for our ABS wire. We'll make sure we secure this. We don't want anything getting caught while we're driving down the road. Let's focus on bleeding the brakes. To be able to do that, you have to look along the back side of the caliper. We're looking for the bleeder screw. You should find that you have a protective cover in this area. We'll just pop that right out of place. You do want to reuse that. Make sure you have a collection receptacle underneath this area. We're going to be opening up the bleeder screw, and we need to allow the fluid to steadily trickle out of here. We'll use an 11mm wrench. Okay, we've got a trickle of fluid here. We'll make sure we close this off. At this point, it's time to bleed the brakes. You need to make sure your master cylinder is full, and this is easiest with a second person. We'll have the second person up inside the passenger compartment. We need them to go ahead and pump up that brake pedal till it's nice and firm. Approximately 3 to 5 times, and hold it. When they're holding it, they're going to let me know. I'll open up this bleeder screw and we're going to watch the fluid coming out. Go ahead and pump that brake pedal, please.
Holding. Lower.
Let's close that off. When doing this, I can see a lot of air making its way out. We need to continue this process until it's only fluid and no air. Once you've gotten to the point that you have no air inside the system, go ahead and clean up your mess and reinstall your cover. One last inspection in this area, and we're clear to reinstall the wheel. With it in place, start on all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. We'll bottom these out. Get the wheels safely back on the ground, and then we can torque each of these to 100 foot-pounds. With the wheel back on the ground, we'll torque these in a crisscross manner. We've got our clean .3 brake fluid. Go ahead and open up that cap. Now we'll pay attention along the side here. We want to bring this up to the maximum line. Let's reinstall the cap. At this point, go ahead and close the hood, pump up that brake pedal nice and firm, and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.